So you all sent me some really good questions recently, from anything from balancing chores and playing with your kids to what our homeschool year is going to look like this year and some other things in between. So today I'm taking a little bit of a break from the normal video and we're just going to do some questions and answers. So the first question, a listener asked me about balancing chores and play. She was saying that she has a hard time with wanting to get her dishes done, for example, but the 3-year-old is wanting to play and feeling this sense of mom guilt because she has to take care of things, but she also feels guilty because she's can't play all the time. She's got to take care of the house. And then the other thing was whether or not time with kiddos ever feels like enough, since it never seems to be enough for her kiddos. So I will say there's a couple different questions in one, so I'll address them separately. The first thing that I want to say is chores and time with kids don't have to be mutually exclusive. I've actually learned over the last few years, I used to actually try to do things separately all the time and intentionally every single day. But that didn't work out. The more kids we added and the more things that we've had to do as a family, we're spending time together and we're doing things together, but we do have relaxed family time on Saturdays, but like through the day, we've got stuff that we're doing. So I've learned and I've seen that inviting your kiddos alongside you with whatever you're doing is totally spending time together, especially a 3-year-old. At that age, they love helping mommy. So whenever you're doing dishes, what I like to do is basically invite my 2-year-old to do dishes with me. He's not actually helping, but they love being with you. They love being near. And so inviting him alongside, or her, I don't know if your 3-year-old is a boy or a girl, but inviting your child to be in the kitchen with you, hand them a spoon to go put in the dishwasher or to put away, even if it's not actually going in the right spot. You can champion them, say, yeah, thank you so much. And basically involving them with whatever it is that you're doing can be really helpful. And it's again, this is not actually going to be helpful until they're a little older, but the good thing is that this is doing several things at once. You are taking care of things that you have to get done. You are spending time with your child, and you're simultaneously giving them a work ethic. Like you're teaching them what it is to contribute to the home as a family. And we are just really big believers in our home and family teamwork. Everyone contributes to the mess. Everyone's going to contribute cleaning it up. And we are all learning and becoming stewards of the home. It's not all up to mom to take care of it. So all that to say, when you're spending time with your child, doing little things like that, then they feel included, and it's also starting to teach them how to do things like that. Some other things that you can do to have them near you while you're taking care of stuff is letting them play in the Tupperware drawer, or sometimes I like to have a child sitting on the counter. If I'm right there, if I'm doing something to prepare food or whatever, I can give them something to do right there next to me. Or, anyways. So basically finding little ways for them to play around in the kitchen with you can be helpful. And this can apply to laundry. It can apply to anything that you're taking care of. If you invite them to help you, then it's great. And this can apply to any age. This is not just younger kiddos. We just actually got done today. My hair probably looks like a little bit of a mess today because we spent 2 hours in our carport cleaning it out because it was very messy. And so all the kids jumped in and helped in their own way together. And our 2-year-old just blew bubbles. But anyway, so when you create a culture like that where you guys are doing things like that together, and the kids loved it, by the way. They loved the end result. They loved seeing a clean carport, and they got to help when Team Mefford worked together. That's what we see. But that does have to be cultivated. It doesn't just happen on its own. Also, at the same time, so we can invite our kiddos to do things like that, but sometimes if you just have to knock something out and take care of it, and it only takes like 15, like dishes take like 15 minutes. So sometimes it can also be helpful just in general to have perspective. 15 minutes in the grand scheme of a day is not a long time. So there is a balance. We don't want to get so task oriented that we don't stop to look our kiddos in the eye, or we're not willing to slow down to do things, to invite them to do things with us and to teach them along the way. Like we don't want to be, we're not efficiency minded, right? We don't want to fall into that side of the spectrum. But at the same time, the home does, like you said, the home does have to be taken care of. Tasks have to get done. So kiddos also need to learn patience. They need to learn helpfulness, and they need to learn contentment when mom can't drop everything on a whim all the time and entertain them constantly. So, just to the point of, or the question about when time never feels like enough. If a child is genuinely repetitively craving mommy and it doesn't seem like it's enough, I heard this from somebody years ago, and I found it to be true. It's really helpful to start with the question, am I doing something to contribute to this? Is my children acting out, if they're acting out, because they are competing for my attention? Am I distracted a lot? Am I looking down at a phone and not looking in their eyes a lot of the time throughout the day? If that's the case, then I would say it is helpful to just eliminate that distraction, because it definitely contributes to that kind of behavior where they're more needy, or if they're more fussy, or they're bickering with one another. But if a child is just craving being entertained, they're not just wanting to play, that is a different issue. So, again, ask the introspective question. But if you are present, generally speaking, I'm not saying all the time perfectly. I'm just saying if it characterizes your home that you generally try to be present, it may be time to train the kiddos to self-entertain and to gain some capabilities and skills. Kiddos have a great capacity for imagination and play, and become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. Like kids, right? Like kids have great capacity to enjoy and love the world. But in today's culture, it just with screens and different things competing for their attention, sometimes they can fall into the trap of wanting to be entertained a lot. So if that's the case, then it does take some intentionality to teach them and guide them and disciple them into skills like this and capabilities and being able to self-entertain or be okay with being bored. It can be, these days it's a taught skill. So I would say letting them be bored is a good thing. It builds imagination, it builds confidence and capability, not necessarily boredom, but when that boredom leads to doing things that are productive and good with the boredom. And I'm not productive, I mean creating or playing or building or pretending. That's what I mean by childhood productivity is producing, creating. So what's worked for us is giving them things to do. So my kiddos at this point, they have no problem getting out and playing and using their imagination. So if they come up to mom and tell me that they're bored, they get an extra chore. So that teaches them to not expect mom to entertain them. I have so many things in this house that is on a list that I would love their help with, and I'm happy to give them that chore if they are bored. So they usually don't ask. But then also some activities that can help build creativity that you can guide them in and teach them some skills is, depending on the age, musical instrument. We use an online music academy that we've loved. It's cheap, and relatively speaking, you pay a monthly fee. It's a membership platform to where you pay a monthly fee, and then you get a set of pre-recorded videos to teach you various instruments that you can choose from. So there was a time when several of our kids were in the same piano class, and we were paying a flat fee for that piano class. So it's great. They have also live coaching that you can do, live coaching calls and little recitals and stuff. So it's fun. The kids love it. It's called Voteberg Music Academy. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. Some other things that our kids do is, or that we've taught them to do, is read. Our kids love to read at this point. It hasn't always been, they haven't always loved it to the degree that they do now, but we give them plenty of books. We go to the library. It's like Christmas morning whenever we come home from the library. Soccer, basketball, learning to throw a ball, kick a ball. Depending on the age, Legos, well, really Legos go for a really long time, but like Duplos, Lincoln Logs, outdoor pretend play, trampoline, bikes, rollerblading, things like that. Our boys and girls loved to learn how to hammer scrap pieces of wood with nails. Obviously, that has to be, you have to lay some guidelines and train your kiddos how to do that and not to drop nails and things like that. But that's another little thing that you can do. For the girls, depending on ages, we got our girls a kid-friendly cookbook. They usually help me with dinner. Each child helps me with dinner once a week. That's another thing that I rope them in, that they get mommy time. They get a special night to cook dinner with me. And that's like devoted to them. We talk and catch up, and that's me inviting them into what I'm doing. But all that to say, they are in the kitchen. I'm fine with them building simple recipes on their own if they ask permission and it's within certain guidelines and stuff. As long as they clean it up, I don't care. So that builds their confidence. So the goal is to equip them to be fruitful and not to depend on mom to entertain them, because that's just not my role. We have also found that having some structured rest and reading time, so they have free time. We also have school time, but in the afternoon, there is a rest period where they're separate and they have to learn to be content reading or doing a quiet skill or something like that. So that has also helped cultivate some of these skills. So that is a lot, but hopefully there's something in there that sparked some inspiration, and maybe there's something that you can use there. So for the second question, somebody asked about our evening schedule. Like, what time do we eat dinner? What time do we get our kids in bed for their sibling? And when do they have sibling time? And when do Jeremy and I have time together in the evenings? So generally, ideally, it does not always work out this way. The aim is 5:30 for dinner. We have dinner together. We catch up on the day, do our trials and treasures. And then it's family worship time. We do our scamp, which is our cleanup after meal time. And then the kiddos go and do their evening routine. Depending on the time, we'll have some family time together, and then we'll sing and pray together and put the little kids down. The little kids, the aim for them is to be in bed at 7:30. And then our older kids will go have sibling time in their room. But here lately, we've actually noticed that a couple of our older kids are needing to have a bit more connection without the little kids around with mom and dad. So we are aiming to actually shift the evening a little bit to have some time with them after we put the little kids down. But the goal would be to have them in their room no matter what by 8:15 so that Jeremy and I can hang out. So yeah, then we'll hang out. And at some point in the evening, right after scamp, a lot of times I'll try to go and take a quick shower. And that way Jeremy and I can spend some time together, catch up on the day and things like that. I will say, if even with this new adjustment, we're still obviously figuring this out, to having time with the older kids in the evening. Jeremy and I like to have a couple of evenings a week where we just spend dedicated time, and every evening we have some time together, but more time to play a game or to catch up more, or have a date night or something. So even if it's a stay-in date night. So if that's the case, then all the kids are in bedrooms at 7:30. But anyways, so that's what we do. And then Jeremy and I usually try to be lights out by 10 so that we can wake up and seize the day the next day. All right. And the third question is homeschool updates for the year. And so last year we did Sonlight and we loved the read alouds. It was so wonderful. You could do the book work at the table, individual work first, and then you all gather on the couch or whatever, and you do a lot of read alouds. And the read alouds were fantastic. We all loved them, but we did not I don't personally love the way that the language arts is structured, and I love classical education. So I don't know if this matters, but we generally at this point and for a while, we really like a blend of Charlotte Mason and classical. So that's why we loved the Sonlight. It's because all the reading, but Sonlight is not classical. This year we were going to possibly do Memoria Press. I appreciate the thought put into it. It seems very like a very well done curriculum. It's very well rounded, but I will be honest. When I got all the boxes in the mail, it just felt like a lot for where we're at this year as a family. I've got a toddler and a baby, and it just felt a bit too rigorous to jump into Memoria Press this year, although we may revisit it another time. But here's the thing with classical. I don't know if you know much about classical, but the first time I ran into it and even heard of it, it was seeing the caliber of the children that I used to babysit regularly. And just as an example, I guess she was in middle school or young high school at the time. I don't remember. But she was not anywhere near graduating high school, and she had to debate abortion from both sides. I was so impressed by the fact that they were teaching these children how to understand argument, they basically taught these kids how to think in a way that I, at the time in college or grad school, didn't know how. I couldn't have done that. I felt like at the time I couldn't have done that, and it would still probably be hard for me to do that, to be able to hear both sides and understand both sides of an argument very fully, and then to be able to debate from both sides. So I was just so impressed. And then the biblical worldview taught in this classical school. Anyway, I just fell in love with classical. So I love that it teaches kids how to think and to argue well. And in this day and age, our kids need to know how to think. So I really want, even if I'm not going to be able to do if I'm not going to be able to do something like Memoria Press, I still would love to incorporate some of the classics and the Christian biblical worldview and classical approach to our school this year. So, I found something called Biblioplan. It's something I'd never heard about. Apparently, it's not very widely marketed. Apparently, it's more word of mouth and conventions and stuff like that. Their website they just don't put a ton of, I guess, priority into their marketing. So, but the reviews that I saw, they had great reviews. It's a family-centered classical curriculum for history, Bible, and literature. Very well reviewed. And I loved too that it works really well for larger families, kind of like Sonlight. You can sit on the couch, read the same material, but one difference is with this that they have different assignments for different ages. So I also really liked that it builds towards the logic and rhetoric stages of the trivium with the classical model. So we decided to go with that for our history, Bible, and literature. And they have a lot of living books, apparently. I'm still waiting on it in the mail, but apparently there's a book list that's great that goes alongside the curriculum. So to be probably to be continued. I'll let you guys know how it goes, but I'm excited about it. The girls are going to do Latin online. I don't know Latin. And Memoria Press Academy they have this online academy for various classes. And so we're signing up our two oldest with online Latin. And then we do spell to write and read. It's it's really simple once you learn it, but if you don't know it, it does take a lot of learning on the front end for mom. But it teaches spelling, writing, and reading. This is how we taught our kids cursive to start out with, and it works really well, and I know how to do it, so we're just going to stick with it for our 9-year-old and our 7-year-old, and probably start our 4-year-old on this. And and keep teaching that little kiddo how to read. For grammar and composition, we are going to do IEW for our oldest, and science will do Apologia. So this is kind of piecing together, but these are things that we've used before and we really liked. I love Apologia. I think science is very important. I almost became an atheist in college because of a science class that I was taking. I was not a Christian at the time, but I almost became a full-blown atheist, just did not know how God could exist with what I was learning. And then I went home to my parents' house in Chattanooga, and the sermon was about basically scientific evidence that God exists. I don't know. It was absurd. And so that kept me from becoming atheist. But all that to say, I do think like science taught with a biblical worldview is very important, because a lot of, like I was public school, and they try to keep all that very separate. So, and then math, we've done Math Mammoth for years and really love it. We've got 5th grade and down, and so far it's worked really well for us. So I like it because it's cheap. It's great. We got it and first heard about it through Logos Press, which is another classical avenue that you can take. But anyways, I really like it because I'm kind of hands off with it. I'm there for questions if they come up, but all new concepts are taught through a video online. The kids watch their video and then they go do their work in their workbooks independently. And it could be through several lessons. And then I personally have my kids check their own math work, and then make their own, try to redo the problems that they miss. And if they can't get it the second time, then they come up to me and we will work it out. And obviously, if they have questions before, then that's fine too. And then we'll have penmanship and the reading list. And I'm excited because this year I thought we were going to have to do school 5 days a week, and we're actually going to stick with 4 days a week. That's what I like. So Fridays, we'll do any catch up. We'll do our nature walks, art, library, zoo, paper Sloyd. And then that's our whatever we want to do, basically. It's whatever I want to do that week. And that is our deep cleaning day. So home skills on Fridays. So I will say overall, when I got Memoria Press in the mail, I kept it for quite a while and I had one day to send it back. So this is a very last minute change, but I feel a lot better about it. And I think it's going to work really well for our family this year. So it's more pieced together than what I did last year, but it just works really well for us. So that's what we're doing this year. And the next question is asking how I meal plan. So at the very beginning, I tried a strict 3-week dinner rotation where you literally write out the meals for 1 week, different meals for second week, different meals for the third week, and then rotate those. But I found for me in this stage of life, it just felt a bit too rigid. It didn't really, the way that I had it set up, I'm sure that you can do it better than I did. Maybe if you did 5 meals planned instead of 7, I don't know how I did it, but I didn't really have a lot of flexibility for leftovers or using up fridge items, or if we were to go out to eat, which that never happens because that cost a lot of money for us to do. It just didn't, I found that food was getting wasted whenever I did it that way before. Maybe there's a better way to do it. If you know of a better way with that rotation, let me know. But currently what I do is I have a few lists in the back of my notebook. If you've been around here any length of time, you know that I plan in my notebook, just a plain notebook. I've got some videos on it. I found it very helpful. Anyway, it's a plain notebook, but on the back, I have a list of dinners. I have a list of sides. I have a list of soups, and a couple other lists because I actually typed it out so that I can reprint it every time I have to switch notebooks every 6 months or so. But basically what I do is on Sunday, I will look at the fridge, see if there's anything we need see if there's anything that we need to use. I will write out a dinner or two at the beginning of week to help use those up. I only plan dinners because we're pretty boring with breakfast and lunch. We kind of do the same things and it's fine. We do leftovers for lunch a lot too. But anyways, so once I use up whatever we have in our fridge, if I know that that's going to get used up, then I just basically flip over to the back of my notebook and I pull from that. So it works really well for me. And yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it, in my opinion. So that's what works for us right now. I will say since I write my dinners in my notebook, I can look back really easily at the week before and see if I did something. Like if I did taco bowls last week, I probably won't do taco bowls this week. So I try to still keep it somewhat interesting and not do the same thing every single time. But I might do burritos instead. I might still keep the that theme, but we might do burritos or enchiladas or tacos or taco soup or something like that. But anyways, all that to say, I keep it very, very simple, and that is key. So the next question is, how do we discipline and disciple our children's character? So I here am not going to get into full specifics because it's just not the venue for it. And I feel like that's more of a conversation. But big picture, I would say consistency is just really important. So general principles that we kind of stick by is from a young age, we teach our children first time obedience. And it doesn't mean that they just get it right away and they always obey when they're older. But the idea is that if you're training them in first time obedience from a young age, over time, over years, increasingly it becomes more of the norm for them. And you're having to discipline less because they learn to obey the first time. So when I say first time obedience, I'm saying if we expect them to obey, we expect them to obey right away, not to delay. Delayed obedience is disobedience. We expect them to do it all the way. We don't expect doing something half-heartedly or halfway is also not obedience. And we expect them to have a cheerful attitude. Now, I'm not saying be fake. I'm not expecting them to have a super happy, like, whoa, yeah, mom, I'm so excited to do what you asked me to do that I don't want to do. But they're not allowed to have a bad attitude. So if they're stomping their feet or they have the furrowed brow or they're pouting or moping or having just a very clearly bad attitude, then that's disobedience. So, but if they are obeying all the way and right away with a good attitude, then that's obedience. And if they don't, then if we've given a command and they've heard that command, we've looked them in the eye, we calmly ask them to do something, they've heard us, they say, yes, mom, yes, dad. We require that of them so that we know that they heard us, and also because that's respectful. If they've heard and then they don't do, then we have to follow through. And that's what I mean by consistency. I actually didn't know what that really meant at first, but that's what consistency is you follow through. If we give a command or we give instruction, and then we need to pay attention and see if they're doing what we say. I will say it's important too, and I'm speaking this to myself because it can be just a very easy pitfall, is it's important to guard against overusing commands out of preference or convenience. So what I mean by that is if they're doing something childish that's not overtly wrong or inconsiderate or, whatever, if they're just doing something different, or maybe it's a little annoying, but it's not wrong, I would just say guard against being too nitpicky, because if we're giving command after command after command and we're being really picky and we're constantly on their case, that can exasperate a child. So it is important to be selective and thoughtful. So anyway, again, overall, if we give a command, we follow through, we expect obedience the first time right away with a good attitude, and then we want, yes, mommy, yes, daddy. And I will say early consistency, it does help. It does make it a lot easier to maintain the standard, and they're very used to that standard as they get older. It builds loving obedience, and it prevents parental exasperation. And I think this is a really important point. If you are repeating yourself, actually, when we first became parents, we had some friends who told us, if you feel like your blood is starting to boil, that should be a red flag that we as the parent have been in the wrong. And I don't mean by because we're getting angry. I mean that it shouldn't get to the point where our blood is boiling, because if we have been consistent and follow through with the if we've been consistent, then we've already nipped that in the bud, right? Like, we shouldn't have to repeat ourselves. that's really, if we're repeating ourselves, then we are multiple times, then we are being unfaithful as parents. We're not following through and being consistent. So I did not understand that at first, but now I totally get it, because yes, if I if I'm just not willing to follow through, then I'm training my children to think, oh, mommy doesn't mean what she says. She only means it when she gets mad. We don't want our kids to think, to believe that and to see that. We want our kids to know that when mommy and daddy say something, they mean it. And so instead of escalating, we can keep a calm demeanor because we're saying it one time and then we're following through. And do we do this perfectly? No. But that is definitely what we aim to do. And when it's going that way, everyone's happier. And the kids are not exasperated and we are not exasperated. And Doug Wilson and Nancy Wilson, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they have some really, really great books on parenting. Why Children Matter, Future Men, Future Women. Rachel Jankovic is their daughter, and she has a book called Loving the Little Years. Fabulous book. It's an annual read for me is the goal, but it's so good. Anyway, I've heard them say that if you are angry and your blood is boiling, you're not qualified to discipline and to give consequences to your child. So anyway, I also thought that was really helpful. At that point, we send our child to the room, or we take a minute, we pray, we get right with the Lord, and then we can go follow through with our child if we need to. Our consequences vary by offense. We're not locked into one method. Sometimes there's natural consequences. Sometimes we have them run laps around the house or doing burpees. If they are bickering or having a bad attitude towards one another, we actually have them hold hands, and they'll take a lap or a few around the house, and they have to ask each other questions and take turns asking each other questions. And usually they come in the door and they're smiling. Or if they've wronged a sibling, then sometimes we'll have them serve the sibling, like you have to go clean their room, So anyway, bottom line, we just believe in first time obedience and then training them in their character and some of those other ways that I mentioned. But anyways, thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. I am going to do occasional Q&A episodes like this because I honestly have a hard time answering questions in the comments. It's just a hard place to answer in-depth answer questions in depth. So if you have a question, you can go to my website, laurenmefford.com. I have a place where you can submit your questions, and I'm going to be doing these occasionally. So anyway, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful for all of you, and I will see you in the next one.